Thank you all for joining us. Before we begin, there's a few, well, first I'd like to call the meeting to order. But before we begin, I just want to mention a few notes about tonight's meeting format. Our meeting is being held, of course, in person as well in a Zoom meeting format. Commissioners, planning department staff, and members of the public are attending in the Wheat Ridge City Hall and by way of the Zoom platform. The Planning Commission has followed kind of the same format that City Council is following and returned to in-person meetings as positivity rates in Jefferson County have declined. In addition to online via Zoom, we are also broadcasting this meeting on Channel 8 and wheatridgespeaks.org. If you are interested in speaking at tonight's meeting online, please raise your hand on Zoom or on the dial-in telephone call. A Zoom meeting link and a dial-in information can be found on wheatridgespeaks.org. When it is time for public comment, and there are 4 opportunities for public comment tonight, those who wish to speak or comment, you can do that either by signing up on the sheets in the back of the room or to raise your hand on the Zoom platform using the raise your hand button. If you're dialing in, please press *9 to raise your hand or *6 to unmute your phone. If you do plan to speak online tonight, please keep background noise to a minimum. And if you don't plan to speak, we recommend just watching us on the television on Channel 8 or wheatridgespeaks.org, where we stream online. So we appreciate your participation in tonight's meeting. We hope to create a friendly and respectful atmosphere for public dialogue, and we appreciate your help in the process. So I'd like to formally call the meeting to order for the City of Wheat Ridge Planning Commission for April 7th, 2022. So first item on our agenda tonight is the roll call of members. Tammy, may I get a roll call of members, please?
Yes. Melissa Antle.
Present.
Christine Disney.
Here.
Jerry DiTullio.
Here.
Daniel Larson.
Here.
Janet Leo. Here. Jonathan Schelke. Here. Julianne Stern.
Here.
And Will Kearns is absent tonight.
Great. The next item on our agenda tonight is the Pledge of Allegiance. So please stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, thank you. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the order for tonight's agenda. Is there a motion to approve the order of tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second, are there any additions or corrections to tonight's agenda? Hearing none, let's go ahead and call for a vote.
Motion approved, 7-0.
Great. Next item on our agenda, number 4, is the approval of minutes. We'll vote to approve the minutes from our last meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from our meeting on March 17th?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the minutes of March 17th, 2022.
Thank you. Do I hear a second? Second. All right, let's go ahead and vote.
Motion approved, 6-0 with 1 abstaining.
Great. Item number 5 on our agenda is the public forum. So we'll now open the general interest public forum, part of our agenda. This is the time for any person who wishes to speak on a subject that is not related to one of the cases or one of the items on our agenda. If you plan to speak on one of the items on tonight's agenda, please just wait until the hearing for that item is discussed. As a reminder, anyone interested in speaking as part of the public forum has 3 minutes maximum to speak, and you're not allowed to donate your time to other people. If you do plan to speak, give us your name, spell your last name, and share your address with us. Is there anyone interested in speaking as part of the general interest public forum?
No one has signed up in person.
All right, Tammy, do we have anyone on Zoom?
I do have a few people on Zoom. Currently, if you would like to speak during the public forum, please raise your hand. Nobody's raising their hand this time.
Okay, great. One last call. Is there anyone interested in speaking as part of the general interest public forum? Okay, well, hearing no volunteers, I will go ahead and close the general interest public forum. Okay, great. So we are going to go ahead and break into the public forum portion of the agenda. Our first item on the public forum tonight is case number WZ22-02, an application filed by John Grafey for approval of a zone change from restricted commercial to mixed-use neighborhood on a property located at 4501 Wadsworth Boulevard. I'd like to again welcome members of the public to our hearing. It's important that this hearing be conducted in a respectful and dignified manner. Our goal is always to create a friendly atmosphere for public dialogue, and we appreciate your help in this process. So we start all our meetings with a presentation from the staff, and in some cases, a presentation for the applicant. After the presentations, commissioners will ask questions of staff and the applicant. After that, we'll invite members of the public to raise their hand and comment during the citizen forums. We typically administer an oath for any participant in a public hearing, staff, applicants, and the public. In this hybrid meeting format, we are administering the oath in a different way. If you comment during a public hearing tonight, by choosing to testify, you are agreeing that the testimony you give will be the truth as you know it. So with that being said, can we have the staff presentation, please?
You may. Hi, I'm Scott Cutler, Senior Planner with the City of Wheat Ridge Community Development Department, and this is case number WZ2202, request for approval of a zone change at 4501 Wadsworth Boulevard from restricted commercial to mixed-use neighborhood. I'd like to enter into the public record the contents of the case file, the zoning ordinance, the comprehensive plan, and this presentation. The properties within the City of Wheat Ridge, all appropriate notification and posting requirements have been met. Therefore, Planning Commission has jurisdiction to hear this case. The subject property is outlined here in red in the middle of the screen. It's located on the west side of Wadsworth Boulevard, just north of the intersection with 45th Avenue. The area is primarily commercial in nature with some multifamily uses to the west, church to the north, another church to the east, and more intensive commercial uses to the south. The property is about 19,000 square feet in size and currently contains a two-story retail building from the 1960s. The property will be partially impacted by the Wadsworth Improvement Project, and right-of-way has already been acquired along the frontage of the property. This is a zoning map of the area, and the property is currently zoned restricted commercial, and again outlined in red in the middle of the map. Wadsworth, south of 44th Avenue, was legislatively rezoned by the city to mixed-use commercial, that light blue color, in 2011. But this property is north of those boundaries and was not included in that rezoning effort. Properties north of 45th Avenue and Wadsworth serve as a transition zone as properties gradually get smaller in size and contain a mix of zoning designations. 3 properties north of 45th Avenue on Wadsworth Boulevard have been rezoned to MUN from other designations, most recently the church property immediately to the north of the subject property, shown in dark blue. This is a view of the subject property looking west from Wadsworth, and like I said, it's a 1 to 2 story commercial building with some parking, some of which will be affected by the Wadsworth project. The purpose of the zone change is to result in a zoning that more accurately reflects surrounding conditions and other nearby zoning designations, including the few properties to the north already zoned MUN. The current RC zone district is a legacy zone district established with the city's founding in 1969, and it allows a limited range of commercial and office uses, but is really limiting in terms of allowed uses, including retail. The MUN zone district is intended for commercial corridors and will allow uses more consistent with those found elsewhere in the corridor north of 45th. RC was originally designed for and is often seen on small properties with more adjacency to low-density residential uses, but is very limiting in terms of allowed land uses. So for example, it prohibits upholstery shops, which is one of the owner's desired uses for the property. The MUN designation would allow more flexibility for a new user of the building and will provide standards for any redevelopment of the site were that to occur. The proposed MUN zoning allows residential, commercial, or a mix of the two. The MUN district is complementary to the context of the corridor and the surrounding zoning and land uses, and provides a wider range of allowed retail uses than the existing RC zoning. The development standards are similar to RC, with both zones allowing up to 50 feet for a commercial building, and MUN also allows residential uses, but limited to 35 feet in height. And this table summarizes the proposed zoning's development standards, most of which would apply if the property were to redevelop. The design standards in MUN are strict and includes architectural standards, open space requirements, setbacks, and parking. As a requirement of the zone change process, a neighborhood meeting was held on February 9th, 2022 in a virtual Zoom meeting setting, and one person attended the meeting and did not have any concerns. Wheat Ridge is not a full-service city, and we also sent the application on referral to outside agencies, including fire, water, and sanitation, and completed an internal review, and we did not receive any concerns or objections from those agencies. Before the hearing, the property was posted for 15 days, and letters were sent to property owners and residents within 600 feet of the property. We received one comment on Wheat Ridge Speaks in support of this application. Bless you. We use several criteria to evaluate zone change requests, which includes consistency with the comprehensive plan. And staff believes that the proposed MUN zoning is consistent with the policies and goals in the comp plan. The property is located on the Wadsworth corridor, which is a primary commercial corridor. The designation envisions a corridor with a broad mix of activities, including a mix of commercial and residential uses. A stated goal in the comprehensive plan is to promote reinvestment in property. The zone change request supports the comprehensive plan by enabling investment in the property and aligning the zoning with the other mixed-use zoning in the area. Ultimately, staff is recommending approval of the request for the following reasons. Based on the character and land use patterns on Wadsworth, the MUN zone district in this area is more appropriate than RC in terms of allowed land uses. For that reason, the zone change should not have an adverse effect on the surrounding area. The zone change to MUN is supported by the comprehensive plan, specifically the vision for Wadsworth Boulevard and reinvestment in aging commercial properties. It enables investment in the property by aligning the zoning with the city's mixed-use goals for the corridor. At this point, Planning Commission will recommend a decision to City Council, who will also review the zone change application request. If City Council approves the request, then the zone change is approved. That concludes my presentation. The applicant is here, won't make a presentation, but is also available for questions. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Okay, now let's go ahead and entertain any questions that any of the planning commissioners may have. Of course, as always, please try to refrain from judgment or stating your opinion, whether it's for or against at this point, and hold any comments about support or concern until after public comment. Commissioner Disney, do you have any questions?
I just, excuse me, I just have one question. With the widening of Wadsworth and the loss of parking, will the parking be moved behind the building? Where do you plan on having people park?
There is some existing parking behind the building as well.
So that will be used instead of in front?
I believe so, and I don't know the exact impact of Wadsworth. Just wanted to point it out that that project is actively under construction, so it's definitely impacted.
Any other questions?
No.
Not to go out of order, but I had actually a similar question that maybe you won't be able to answer, but just curious about, I know there's a certain amount of right-of-way acquisition, and is that in any way initiating the interest in this because of parking requirements within these two different zones? You know, and the impact it has on the private property owner and their feeling of how that contributes to them having a viable business.
I'll let maybe the applicant address some of their motivation. I don't think that was the primary motivator, but certainly the mixed use provides a little bit more relief from, with the parking requirements being a little more flexible. Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Leo, do you have any questions? No, I don't. Okay, Commissioner Stern,
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question, I guess, for the applicant. Does the applicant own the property?
My name is John Grafe, Graefe, 4501, and yes, I do own the property.
Do you plan to redevelop that building?
No, we're actually under contract to sell the building to an upholstery shop, and there is parking behind the building.
Okay.
So I'm clear on this. You own it, but you would be, what, leasing it to the?
Selling it.
Selling it to the operator?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner DiTilio?
Nothing.
Okay. And Commissioner Shelkey, any questions? No, I don't. Okay. Great. Any further questions from the commissioners? Okay, I will now go ahead and open the hearing for public comment. If you wish to speak on this case, you will have a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. And of course, you cannot donate your time to someone else. Lauren, do we have anyone signed up to speak on this item?
No one has signed up in person.
Okay, Tammy, how about online?
Again, there are a few people on the Zoom call. If you would like to have any comments, can you please raise your hand at this time? Nobody is raising their hand.
Okay. One more go around. Is there anyone interested that didn't sign up that would like to speak on this item? Okay, well, if there is no one else, I will go ahead and close the citizen forum. Before I entertain a motion, I just wanted to check if there are any more comments or questions from the commissioners at this time. No? Okay. Is anyone ready to make a motion?
Madam Chair, I move to recommend approval of case number WZ-22-02, a request for approval of zone change from restricted commercial RC to mixed-use neighborhood, MUN, for property located at 4501 Wadsworth Boulevard for the following reasons. One, the proposed change will promote the public health, safety, or welfare of the community and does not result in an adverse effect on the surrounding area. Number two, utility infrastructure adequately services the property. Item number three, the proposed zone change is consistent with the goals and objectives of the city's comprehensive plan and consistent with the character of Wadsworth Boulevard. Number four, the zone change will provide additional opportunity for reinvestment in the area. And number five, the criteria used to evaluate the zone change supports the request.
Great. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, let's go ahead and take a vote.
Motion carries 7-0.
Great. Thank you, Scott, and thank you, Mr. Grafe. I still didn't pronounce it correctly. I will now go ahead and close the public hearing. All right, our second case for this evening is case number WS-21-08, an application filed by Story Built for approval of a major subdivision for a mixed-use development including one commercial lot, partially preserving the existing commercial building, 29 townhome units, and a track for parking access and open space on a property zoned mixed-use neighborhood and located at 5807 and 5823 West 38th Avenue. Can we go ahead and get a staff report on the item?
Yes, I'm back again. Scott Cutler, Senior Planner, City of Wheat Ridge. This is case number WS-2108, a request for approval of a major subdivision in the mixed-use neighborhood zone district. I'd like to enter into the public record the contents of the case file, the subdivision regulations, and this presentation. The properties within the City of Wheat Ridge and all appropriate notification and posting requirements have been met. Therefore, Planning Commission has jurisdiction to hear this case. This is a 2020 aerial view of the property, which is outlined in red. It's located on the north side of 30th Avenue between Eaton Street and Harlan Street, just to the northwest of the intersection with Fenton Street. It's about 1.4 acres in size and currently contains 2 lots. The eastern lot contains a commercial and retail building from 1960 and includes a large parking lot and multiple accessory buildings surrounding it. The western lot contains 2 single-unit homes from the 1930s and multiple accessory buildings. There are a wide range of uses in the area. Properties to the west and south contain a range of commercial uses and are commercial in nature. Properties to the north contain single-unit homes and some smaller multi-unit properties. Properties to the east at the corner of 38th and Eaton across a shared access easement were approved in 2021 for townhomes, and that's zoned MUN. And then this site and that previously approved site are not contiguous and won't have connections between them. This property is zoned mixed-use neighborhood, MUN, as are most properties along 30th Avenue in this area due to a legislative rezoning in 2012. Properties to the north are zoned R3, which allows multifamily and townhomes up to 12 units per acre, although they primarily contain single-unit homes as of now. The portion just to the east of the site, zoned NC in pink, is the access easement I mentioned earlier. There are some lower density zones to the northeast along Eaton Street, generally R1A, but this property does not actually border any property zoned for low density. The Community Development Department is reviewing an administrative site plan application including civil construction documents for a mixed-use development containing a mix of commercial and residential uses, including the potential preservation of an existing commercial building at the southeast. Major subdivision is required to sell each residential unit separately as fee-simple townhomes and to create common area tracts and utility easements. The subdivision consists of 30 total lots and 1 common area tract to accommodate 29 townhome units and 1 commercial lot. City Code requires City Council approval of major subdivisions, even though the commercial and residential uses are permitted uses for the property. Staff has found the site plan to be approvable, which includes the site layout, setbacks, architecture, landscaping, and parking. The developer will be responsible for maintaining the existing public improvements along 30th Avenue and reconstructing where needed. The plat also dedicates all necessary access, utility, and drainage easements. The subdivision regulations are found in Article 4 of the Zoning Code. A subdivision is a reconfiguration of lots, tracts, or parcels for sale or development. It can create, remove, or define property lines. It allows the city to evaluate right-of-way, and it allows the city to evaluate civil construction documents. A subdivision plat does not affect the zoning or permitted uses on the property. Rather, it enables development already permitted by the current zoning and allows the developer to, in this case, sell the dwelling units to individual buyers. A major subdivision would not be required if the units were not being platted for sale. Subdivision approvals are ministerial in nature and are non-discretionary. Discussion of permitted uses in site design or architecture are not within Planning Commission or City Council's jurisdiction in this case. The plat corresponds with the approvable site plan and allows each unit to be sold separately and for the commercial building to be placed on its own lot shown at the southeast. Each of the townhome buildings are highlighted in red to show the general placement of the buildings. The buildings consist of 2 to 5 units each and are generally set around the perimeter of the site, focusing on the central open space areas and parking. The units are set back significantly from the northern property line, which is adjacent to the R3 developments to the north. The other sides are adjacent to commercial or to the access easements. The common areas, including the drive aisles and common open spaces, are placed in a tract to be owned and maintained by the owners association. And I'll show this in detail in the next slide. And the plat will also dedicate easements which allow for distribution of utilities, including water, sanitation, and electricity, and utility design is being coordinated with those districts. Tract A is being dedicated as common area tract, which will include all of the public utility easements, the water and sanitation easements, detention facility easements, open space, and parking for both the commercial building and some guest parking for the residential uses. Everything highlighted in colors on this slide is included within Tract A. The green areas are primarily being used as landscape open space with some guest parking and pedestrian pathways. The access easements, adjacent commercial parking, and fire turnaround is shown in gray. A water detention facility will be placed below the parking areas in some open space in a vault, which is common for infill developments like this. Lot 30 also contains some open space at the front of an existing patio area that is not being shown. The plat does not contain a lot of the approvable site detail from the site plan application and just shows the lot lines and easement lines. We were just not a full-service city, so we sent the application on referral to outside agencies, including fire, water, and sanitation, and completed an internal review. Some utility upgrades will be required at the developer's expense per the utility districts and will be constructed with the project. There are no remaining comments on this application, and the engineering division has found the plat to be approvable, pending some minor typo changes. The site plan, which includes the architecture, landscaping, and site design, has also been found approvable by the planning division. Construction documents are under review by the engineering division and are nearing approval. And the site plan and construction documents are not shared as part of this presentation. Before the hearing, the property was posted for 15 days, and letters were sent to property owners and residents within a 600-foot radius, and Planning Commission did receive 2 comments on Wheat Ridge Speaks for this application, one in favor and one opposed. Ultimately, staff has concluded that the request complies with the subdivision regulations, corresponds with the approvable site plan, and that all agencies can serve the property with upgrades required at the developer's expense. Approval of the plat will allow development of the site as allowed under the current zoning to proceed. For all those reasons, we request that Planning Commission recommend approval, and then the major subdivision will go on to City Council for final approval. That concludes my presentation. The applicant team is here and also on Zoom if you have questions for them. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Scott. Okay, let's go ahead and see if there are any questions from the commissioners. Why don't we start over here this time, Commissioner Schuelke?
The commercial property, is that the pizza place that's there?
It is, yes.
And did you say there's another prior approved subdivision to the east?
There is across the alleyway or easement, so they're not contiguous, but yeah, that was approved in 2021. It's 26-unit townhome development and about 1.4 acres as well.
Commissioner DiTilio.
Thank you. When you talked about the development in the back, that's the reincarnation project that was approved you're talking about? The 26 units?
There's a lot in between this, or a couple of lots between this site and the Incarnation development.
Oh, okay.
But that alleyway is actually owned by Incarnation, so it actually borders their property, technically. It's just off the screen to the north.
Incarnation's off the screen. I think what Scott was referring to is a prior phase from this developer, which is sort of L-shaped immediately to the east. That's the 26 units.
Correct, yep.
Adjacent to Eaton. Yeah.
And then Is there going to be a metro district on this property for public improvements?
The city would require an owners association. That would be the developer. That would probably be able to answer that question better than I could, but my understanding is it's just an owners association.
And then I know it's in urban renewal, but is there going to be a TIF, or is this in urban renewal? Any kind of TIF or any kind of tax increment financing for this project?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Larson, any questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did have a question about, and it has to do with lot 14 and 13. And if we look on the way the driveway is configured, it looks like the driveway actually touches the corner of the building. Is that okay?
That's fairly typical for alley-loaded townhomes, where the pavement goes right up to the building. And the reason why it's shown in a curve is because that's the fire department required radius for fire turnaround.
Okay, that's all the questions I have now. Thank you.
Commissioner Disney, any questions?
No question.
Commissioner Stern
No questions, thank you.
and Commissioner Leo. Okay. Pardon?
One more question, please.
Oh, sure, of course, Commissioner Larson.
Thank you. I noticed that there is the stormwater, the sanitary and the stormwater easements are adjacent. Is there on-site detention of stormwater?
Yeah, there is underground detention that is in that same area,
Where's that located?
central to the property. It's about right in the middle between, there's two different chambers, and they're between the units, so if you look at 19 and the restaurant, the 30-unit
Okay.
commercial space, between those two areas.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, great. And could the applicant address Commissioner DiTilio's questions about the West Metro District? Or, sorry, the Metro District option?
Hi, yes, my name is Jay Siegel. I'm with Storybuilt, the developer. Quick answer is no, there's no Metro District, just Owners Association.
Can you give me your address, please, and the spelling of your last name?
Yes, last name is Siegel, S-I-E-G-E-L, and I live at 2150 South Cherokee Street in Denver.
Thank you.
Great. If there's no further questions, I'll go ahead and open the hearing for public comment. If you wish to speak on the case, you'll have a maximum of 3 minutes to speak, and again, speakers cannot donate their time. Lauren, do we have anyone signed up to speak for this hearing?
No.
Okay. Tammy, is there anyone on Zoom?
There are a couple people on Zoom. If you would wish to speak during this public comment period, can you please raise your hand? Looks like I have one. Pizza Pete Kraus. If you would like to unmute, you can speak, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, is everybody there? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, can you please give your last name, spelling of your last name, and your address, please?
Sure, I'm Peter B. Krause, C-R-O-U-S-E, and I live in Broomfield at 1762 Peregrine Lane, 80020.
Can you spell that for me, please?
Peregrine,
Yes.
P-E-R-E-G-R-I-N-E.
Thank you. You can go ahead and speak now.
Unfortunately, I got onto the meeting late. My daughter Katie's been watching. We own Infinitus.
Pete, I think you just muted yourself. There you go.
And so, unfortunately, because I got on late, I don't know the full nature of the development, other than she said that there was a consideration of trying to maintain some of the current building within the rebuild. Is that correct?
If you want to go ahead and ask all your questions and give all your comments, we'll address all questions at the end of public comment.
Well, I mean, I can't, if I don't know what I'm talking about, then I can't really ask a question. If they're talking about reusing part of that original building, Infinitus Pi would like to register that, given my lack of knowledge on the prior conversation as a caveat, that we would generally not want that to happen. We don't think that the building's got some serious structural problems. The roof is bad and the plumbing is inadequate, and I just don't know what the plan looks like. So it's not having seen the plan, it's a little difficult for me to respond to it, but we're definitely concerned about the construction and how it would negatively impact our business, obviously. So I guess I can't say much more because I really, unfortunately, missed the front end of the meeting.
Okay, thank you for your comments, sir.
Okay.
Scott Tammy, is there anyone else signed up to speak before we try to address the question?
There is one more person, Katie Pye, if
Okay.
you would like to speak. You have 3 minutes. Please give your first, last name, and your address.
Okay, my name is Catherine Kraus, Katherine. I live at 13401 Sheridan Boulevard, Broomfield, Colorado 80020. I am also 50% owner of Infinitus Pi on that location and want to second what my father said, that all that construction around our business will absolutely negatively affect what we can do there. And with our lease being up in 3.5 years, I am curious as to what the plan of this building would be. It's not in good shape. It hasn't been maintained well. And I think it would be a mistake to develop everything around it and leave that singular unit there. To me, it just doesn't make sense to put all that money in and to leave that singular unit there. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
And it looks like there's one more, Susan Hartley. If you would like to speak, please give your name, spelling of your last name and your address, please.
Hi, this is Susan Hartley. I'm at 4015 Eaton Street, Wheat Ridge, Colorado, 80212.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. And I really just have a couple of comments. Number one, this is the same developer that was in front of the commission in the fall. At that time, you know, there were quite a few neighbors from Eaton Street participating, obviously very concerned about this development. The density is way, way, way too much for our neighborhood to put 23 homes on that particular lot right at the corner of our block. And at that time, I don't know if the developer had already purchased this other property, but he never once mentioned that they were doing that and that the development was actually going to be over 50 units, not 23 units. So from, I get that they're saying they're separate because there's an alley between, and I get that this is considered a mixed use lot today, but in effect, we're taking a single home neighborhood on Eaton Street with lots of little children, big single family home lots, and we're now going to cram in less than 3 acres, 50 some plus homes onto the corner. The traffic is going to be astronomical. It already backs up every single day from Harlan to past Eaton during rush hour. The traffic on Eaton is going to increase dramatically. And I believe the last time only 2 in the commissioners meeting, 2 opposed, and in the council meeting, 2 opposed. even though no one in this neighborhood really wants this development. So I know you can't answer questions. I may just be preaching for myself, but I can tell you that this block is incredibly upset about this development, both of them. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Tammy, do we have anyone else on Zoom that is interested in speaking?
There is nobody else raising their hand.
Okay, sir, you wish to speak? Yes. Okay, please approach the podium, state your name and address, spell your last name and your address, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Hello, can you hear me? My name is Todd Hartley. I'm on 4015 Eaton Street. That was my wife that just called in.
Okay.
I ran up here just 5 minutes ago, that's why I came in late. But I didn't know she was going to call in, so I don't want to repeat what she was saying. I do have a couple questions because these were questions that were ignored on the development that the same developer has approves of in the plan for the 2 homes there. I think it's 57, it's on 38th corner of Eaton Street. I could point it out to you, but it's the other big lot or development that the developer is going to turn into, I think it's 20 plus homes on that section, plus the 29 homes presented, I think, on this development. I'm curious to know where people are going to cross the street besides 38th and Harlan Street. So we are within 50 new homes. That's probably 100 plus new people on that corner of Eaton Street and 38th. Don't quite understand where they're going to cross the street. There's no crosswalks except for that one on 38th and Harlan. The other question I have is during construction, we were told on this development on 38th and Eaton that things would be, as far as following rules would be followed. I think just recently, this last week, they were removing asbestos in one of those buildings, and there was no permit pulled on that. So I'm curious to know why that was not followed, as far as following the rules. That's why I'm concerned about this new development, what kind of rules also are going to be broken. There also is, I think, a responsibility with the new developers, the new owners of these lots, to pick up trash, make it look presentable. I'd like for you guys to know it looks like a junkyard right now, that whole corner. And also the new developments that are being proposed today. I'd like to know what the owners are going to do about that. Those are my concerns. So that's all I have.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other members of the public in attendance that wish to speak, or is there anyone on Zoom that has raised their hand?
It looks like Pete Kraus has raised his hand again, but he has already spoken, so don't know if you want to give him more time or not. Probably not, since he's already spoken.
Pardon?
Yes or no for speaking again?
I feel like we've given him 3 minutes
Okay.
to speak. Let's go ahead and close the public forum, the citizens forum. Okay, before we entertain any kind of motion, we have a series of questions that came up during the public comment that some I'll probably pose to Scott, and some, certainly the applicant could maybe handle better. One was related to, are there any plans to maintain the existing building? And maybe the applicant can address that question.
Yes, hi, thank you. So again, we are here looking at the subdivision plat, and on that plat, we have designated a commercial parcel. Plan being to keep intact a portion of that building. We understand that it's, built in the 60s, but part of our plan is to look at that building, ensure that it's sound, really, and allow for some partial demolition on the northern side to make way for some of the additional townhomes that we're here getting platted.
And I assume any portion of the building you maintain will also include redoing plumbing, electric, bringing everything up to code and modernizing.
We will follow all steps with the city to ensure that's the case.
Okay, great. I know we are only at a point of looking at the subdivision, but I guess this is a conversation maybe even for engineering or Scott, but, really looking at 38th as more developments come in this area, how do we plan to address like multimodal circulation, especially with one of the questions we had related to pedestrian crossings? I know as a pedestrian right now, it's pretty limited and high stakes to really try and cross. Is there any information you can provide us?
We can tell you we were anticipating that question or comment. We were actually just talking about it this week in our development review meeting. Fenton is well positioned sort of mid-block between Harlan and the next signal to the east. So it's on our radars too. There are usually certain sort of studies or warrants that you have to meet before you make an investment in a signal or a crossing, but we are keenly aware of that topic and actively talking about it at a staff level.
Okay, that's great. And I know the city has had a habit and tradition of evaluating for mid-block crossings where you kind of reach certain volumes, right? And it warrants those mid-block crossings.
That's right, yeah.
I do believe we don't have any additional questions for you. This might be, some of the other questions we heard seem like questions that maybe occur when you reach the point of construction in terms of how construction management is handled with respect to, kind of making sure you're notifying neighbors, the process in which if people feel like there are violations, they can contact people. I mean, could maybe one of you address that generally, kind of what the approach is, just to provide some feedback on that question?
I can start, maybe turn it over to my team in just a minute, but we will require construction phasing plans, and we understand that although they are two separate developments, and this one is actually still, I believe, under contract, so there's just like a lot of moving parts, there will be a phasing plan that takes into account both developments and ensuring that a lot of the work is contained within the site, ensuring that impacts to Eden Street are minimal. Again, we're looking at a portion that will never connect to Eden Street. The two developments do not connect vehicularly. So in terms of people from this development cutting through to Eden Street, that wouldn't be possible. But yeah, there are, it's a pretty strong construction phasing plan that we would be reviewing. Obviously, everything would be permitted, including site work permits, right-of-way permits, and then all of the vertical building permits as well. So at least from the city side, there's a lot of stopgaps to make sure that stuff is working.
Okay, and part of that requirement is making sure that the construction manager's contact information is posted as well, right? If an issue does arise during construction. I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but.
We do get that contact information. The other thing I'll mention is that the Public Works Department requires a traffic control plan for active construction sites like this. We know it's a tight site, so for all the projects happening on 38th Avenue, that needs to address not only if you're doing work on 38th Avenue, but also construction deliveries and blocking of sidewalks. So that too is something that we track for these kinds of projects.
Okay, great. Thank you. Did you have a comment or question?
So it was mentioned about crosswalks, and it was mentioned that 38th and Harlan is a crosswalk, but there's also the flashing yellow light, just you can push the button at 38th and approximately Benton. So you're talking about an additional, possibly another crosswalk at Fenton, or you said Fenton?
Potentially. We have not gotten to the point of knowing what the designer-specific location is, but we anticipate that there will be demand for something between Benton and Harlan. It's just a longer distance than most pedestrians would walk. They'd be more inclined to jaywalk than walk to one of those signals.
Right.
sort of in the middle, yeah.
But there is one now at Benton that's
There
been there
is.
for a few years. with
That's
the-
correct.
And then it's been mentioned about 50 units, so we're talking about this subdivision is 30 or 29, and then has another subdivision already been approved to the north? Is that where we're getting at for the other 20?
Not to the north, the one that I pointed out on this map to the east
Okay.
last year.
That makes sense.
Yep.
And then to the staff's knowledge, or to the owner's knowledge, has there been any construction going on or debris removal that hasn't been permitted?
No.
And then I guess the last question would be is, I know 38th and Fenton is pretty loaded up right now, that corner with a lot of vehicles, and it does look unsightly for 38th Avenue. Is there a chance that you could start working on cleaning that up sooner than later after this meeting? Or now that you've heard some of the concerns from the neighborhood, what would be the chance of getting that? It looked like there was some old vehicles there, not construction vehicles, but what are the chances of getting that kind of cleaned up?
Sure. So happy to speak to that and a couple other points, if you don't mind, if I
Sure.
come in and speak to. So specifically about the lot I believe you're referencing, which is 5725, which is the southeast corner of 38th and Eaton. The former tenants in that building had quite a collection of automobiles and associated debris, we can say. And so those tenants have moved out, and so a good amount of the existing equipment that's on that site has been removed. There's still some there. I will say, generally, the condition of that property's improved since the last tenant is vacated. Not to say it's not perfect, but of course, we're moving towards development on that side and certainly want to keep it looking tidy, so I appreciate the comment. Additionally, I do want to note, so there was a comment about traffic is a concern, and I do want to make known here, I think it was alluded to, that, part of, yes, these are two different developments, and in many cases they're being seen as one. We did have an open house with the community on December 16th of 2021, just farther down the 38th Avenue West, I believe at the Wheat Ridge Community Center. I might be getting that name incorrectly, but at that time we did unveil both this west phase and then the previously entitled east phase of these two projects. And I think we did do a fair job of fielding parking-related and pedestrian-related concerns from residents at that time. We took those, we put those into memo form, sent those into the city engineering division, who channeled or suggested that we let the residents know that that they had received those comments, and they suggested the residents organize and move forward through the neighborhood traffic management program. So we relayed that back to the neighborhood. So I want to make sure that we just make it known we're here to help solve these issues too, and we're trying to go through the right channels to do that.
Great, thank you.
Madam Chair.
One more
question.
Sure.
So this is a conceptual plan as a subdivision plat, and then is it going to get more detailed and more refined as it goes to city council, or is this going to be it for now?
This is it. So this is what the city council will review as well. Staff has a site plan that is an administrative site plan that we have found to be approvable, and the only reason it's not approved, stamped and approved, is we want to make sure that council gives their blessing on the site, the subdivision plat. But any development on this site, because these townhomes are permitted as a use, they're meeting all of the zoning requirements. That's why it's an administrative approval. However, Wheat Ridge City Code requires that subdivisions over 6 lots, major subdivision goes to city council.
Thank you.
Great, and I know Commissioner Larson, you had another question?
I guess my question has more to do with timing on this. The L-shaped tract on the east came up in front of Planning Commission back in September, and it was like this one, a subdivision request, and that passed, and it passed City Council. And then looking up under the listings that we normally get, this property, and this particular case is WS, I think 108, did not appear until after the property on the east, the phase one, was approved. I guess my question is timing. Why wouldn't we consider both subdivisions at the same time?
They're separate parcels, they don't touch, and they're each owned by different owners, so they've been on different tracks. It happens to be the same developer, interested in the same area, but in the same way, if two homes were for sale on a residential street by two different owners, they wouldn't need to be in the same exact track for those buyers. So they're just, it's hard, you know, practically speaking, when this is all said and done, it's going to look and feel a lot like one single development, but it is definitely two separate parcels, two separate sellers, same buyer.
Same buyer of both properties.
Yes. But those real estate transactions from two separate sellers will result in sort of different timing. I don't know that the second phase was conceived the very first time we heard about the first phase, so they have just dovetailed a little bit.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
That's a good question. Do any other commissioners have questions? Okay, if there aren't questions, we can certainly address any comments you may have. Commissioner Leo?
I just want to be clear on why I can't visualize which building are they talking about? Is the woman who was on the phone talking about that is structurally unsound and should repair and between the two developing areas? But she said it was between the two developing areas, it was not included in the developing areas. So this one seems to be included, so I'm a little confused as to why she said it was outside of between the two developing areas.
I can try to answer that. So on the subdivision map, it would be lot 30. So it's the one in the southeast corner. And I think what she may have been referencing is the fact that it will appear to feel like it's in between the two development sites. Essentially, there would be a townhomes on their west and on their east, even though they're separate projects. But yeah, it's the one, it's lot 30 on this subdivision map. That's where the building is located.
If it's in that area, then he's under the assumption that it's outside of the area, and I'm not sure exactly.
We're always happy to coordinate with existing tenants and certainly that proprietor. We can talk to them.
Okay, so it is inside.
Yes, their structure and their lot are within the bounds of this subdivision.
Okay, well, that's what threw me off.
Yeah.
So okay, I'm with you on that now.
Commissioner Stearns?
Thank you. So I understand kind of the purview of our decision-making tonight, and this comment won't affect my vote. But I do want to make the comment that it does sound like there is a missed opportunity to reach out to those tenants in the commercial building. That business I see as a major contributor to the vibrancy of that stretch of 38th Avenue, and was disappointed to hear that although they're a tenant, not an owner, there had not been a conversation about how that business will contribute to the community that's being created around there.
Commissioner Disney, any comments?
I echo Commissioner Stern's comments. I was surprised that you had not met with the tenant and conveyed your plans. They are a major, major contributor to this city in terms of giving back. And they're both very vital part of the vibrancy, as Commissioner Stern said. And it further concerns me because I have heard from residents that as developers, you have been less than accommodating in terms of requests from the neighborhood. This is, and I said it before, you remember in the fall, I am concerned. It's not going to change my vote. I'm going to vote for this because it meets the requirements. But I think the density is going to greatly impact the character of that area, and my heart is heavy, as I mentioned in the fall, for these people who live around there. I understand that this area is zoned for the density that you're building to. I also know that developers don't have to build to that density, as we saw with the development on Upham. They came back with a less dense, very nice development. I understand that construction costs and you have to make money. You're not in this for charity. But I'm just, it just to me could have gone so much better in a lot of different ways. And that's all I got to say.
Commissioner Larson, any additional comments?
Yeah, I'll just add that I believe that as presented, the applicant as a subdivision, our role here is clear. The concern that I have is the way this was presented, and I understand the vagaries of real estate transactions and whatnot, but I believe the response that the commission may have gotten if we saw both properties being proposed at the same time, adjacent, yeah, there's an easement between them, but they are literally adjacent, that we developed at the same time. And there is a big difference between a 26, 29 unit property and two of them right next to each other.
Thank you. Commissioner DiTilio.
Just real quickly, I had mentioned at a previous case that a rezoning wasn't a right, and that they can be turned down legally. I do know that this is a subdivision, which if this was turned down by the city council, not necessarily us, that lawsuits could be filed, and that would cost the taxpayers money, because most likely on a subdivision denial, the city would lose. And that's why I had mentioned about the last project we talked about. I guess I have a different take on this. The retail that's called in and said they were concerned about this project, well, if this project goes through, they're going to have up to 100 new people that could walk to their retail establishment right next door. And the whole idea of these rezoning back in 2012 when I was mayor was the idea was that the commercial corridors, like a 38th Avenue, were to attract walkability and restaurants and higher density so people could walk from location to location. So while this one little building that's causing so much furor on the phone is that you're going to have up to 100 new customers that could walk to that retail location and buy pizza. So I think we got to look at all the different angles of this. Yes, the density is higher than I would like to have it too, but it's also a subdivision, which has been, like I said, if the council denied it, this could be a lawsuit and the city would lose most likely, and then we're spending more taxpayer money on defending something. So it's a quandary, and I haven't decided yet how I'm going to vote on it, but I think that you have to look at both sides, and this will bring more retail to bring more customers to the retail on that street, walkability.
Thank you. Commissioner Shelkey, did you have any comments or that you would like to?
Maybe it is more of a question. The alley that separates the two properties, is that a functioning alley or abandoned? It doesn't go through, does it?
It goes all the way from 30th Avenue up to the Incarnation development at 41st. So it is actually an active easement, not only for access, but actually some residents on Eaton Street have their garages on that alley. So I think it's crusher fines or gravel right now, and with these projects, part of it will be paved. So yeah, it's an active alleyway and easement.
And just to clarify, there is an easement over this to allow public access, but it is a separate parcel. So it is owned by the Incarnation Homeowners Association. So that is a sliver of separate land that separates these two.
Yep. And that's the reason why these two projects are not actually contiguous.
Okay. Any other comments, Commissioner Shelkey? And I guess I just have one comment that is probably a blend of what we've just heard from Commissioner DiTullio and Commissioner Disney. And it is, I think in Wheat Ridge where we are seeing a lot of transitions, sometimes cases like this aren't, I would say my comments aren't specifically directed at you, but as we see these types of changes in Wheat Ridge, I think there are opportunities to remind us of what do we want to see, what do we want to be, because I think there is a lot of opportunity to create vibrancy along that corridor with mixed-use developments like that, making sure that, they are the appropriate density is a challenge. It's the private property owner's right to build to what the code allows. But I think one thing I know isn't typically required, but is part of that vibrancy of as a community, is when we have businesses like this, especially when they're tenant-owned, a lot of small businesses are tenants. They're not the owners of the building, but they contribute such a large amount to our community. It would be nice if there was specific outreach to them, because they are what create that vibrancy along the corridor. So maybe not just for you, but for everyone tuning in general, just recognizing that our small business owners are what create that vibrancy, and they should be included in these types of processes. With that, I think we are ready to entertain.
Is it possible to respond to a few of those points? I think they're very strong. I'd like to.
Sure.
Thank
We've
you.
thrown a lot at you.
Thank you. I do want to just make sure we make known that we've met with Pizza Pete and Katie Pie twice. Have established a relationship. We've engaged a retail broker to help ideally renegotiate a lease for them in a new space. The challenge there is, I think someone might have mentioned, is construction costs going crazy and us having to understand, the different options that we have at our disposal, all while honoring the existing lease, ensuring that access is maintained during construction, doing everything we can to preserve that business that I think we all like to think we understand. We recognize how integral to the community that is, with its porch and its bike parking and its shared, library out front. So I just want to make sure that, I hear what you're saying. I think we've done our best to get in front and engage that conversation. Mm-hmm. And so just want to echo that I hear that, and again, we're doing our best to do what we believe is best for the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. That is important to know, that you went and took those steps and reached out to the tenants. Great. Well, at this point, we are ready to entertain a motion if the commission is ready.
I move to recommend approval of case number WS-21-08, a request for approval of a major subdivision on property located at 5807 and 5823 West 38th Avenue and zoned mixed-use neighborhood for the following reasons. All requirements of the Subdivision Regulations, Article 4 of the Zoning and Development Code have been met. All agencies can provide services to the property with improvements installed at the developer's expense, with the following conditions. The applicant shall pay the required fees in lieu of parkland dedication at time of building permit. 2, the developer shall enter into a subdivision improvement agreement and a lot sale restriction covenant agreement with the city at the time of recordation of the subdivision plat. 3, minor plat topography and notes corrections per the engineering division shall be made prior to recordation of the plat.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Let's call for a vote.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, everyone. I'll close the public hearing. All right, we have one last case this evening. This is case number ZOA-22-01. It's an ordinance amending section 26-615 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws concerning small cell CMRS facilities. Do we have a staff report for this?
Yes, thank you. I'll just make my comments here from the table tonight, and I'll keep it brief. You saw in the staff report that the city adopted regulations related to small cell about 5 years ago in 2017. Small cell is what it sounds. It is a smaller cellular facility that helps to expand a network. The amendment, we have, and frankly, even though it's been 5 years, we haven't seen a lot of them in Wheat Ridge. You've maybe noticed them in Denver. They're maybe visually more common. We've had 7 applications and only 4 poles installed in that period of time. Don't know why, but it's been fairly low. Despite that, the amendment that you see tonight addresses some of the lessons learned that we've had in that period of time, and it also addresses some public comment that was recently addressed to City Council. In that instance, there was some concern late last year about work in the right-of-way in a residential neighborhood, sort of adjacent to a front yard. It turned out not to be a small cell facility, but it certainly highlighted that we have an opportunity to strengthen our code and be a little bit more clear in terms of where small cell would and wouldn't be allowed adjacent to land. So in short, this ordinance accomplishes sort of 4 different things. First, it requires a building permit as well as a right-of-way permit. That's actually something we're already doing and enforcing, so we'd like to have the teeth behind it in case we were to get some pushback. It requires additional written explanation from the applicant to justify the proposed location and design for their small cell facility. Again, something we're kind of already doing, but would like to have that code backing. The amendment clarifies that it's not the applicant, but the city, specifically the community development director, who gets to decide upon the height, design, and color. We haven't had too much pushback on that, but I think, again, the code strengthening would help. And then lastly, it does respond to that recent public concern in terms of location, and the language now in the code would ensure that a pole doesn't land sort of in the right-of-way in front of somebody's front yard. It would rather be at that property corner. So in short, we cannot disallow small cell that is controlled by federal and state law, but we do have the authority to dictate sort of the characteristics of design and location, and that's what we are trying to do tonight. So with Planning Commission's recommendation, we would move this forward to City Council, and they are scheduled for a public hearing on May 23rd. That's everything I have. We do have a few members of the audience here to testify tonight, so I'll grab that sign-up sheet, and we can do questions as well.
Great. And let me go ahead and formally open the public hearing for this item. Yes, yes. Okay, before we go to public comment, let's go ahead and make sure we address any questions from the commissioners. Okay, Commissioner Disney? Do you have any questions?
I have a couple. Lauren, on page 2, under the proposed code amendment, at the end of the paragraph, the sentence reads, "It is important to note that small cell facilities are used to transmit wireless technology, which currently includes 4G and 5G radio frequencies, depending on the carrier. State law and city code define small cell more broadly and are not specific to the 5G network." So am I to understand that sentence means that the larger umbrella does include 5G?
Correct.
Okay. And my second question is, why do these have to be installed in residential areas?
State law essentially makes it a use by right in any zone district, and local jurisdictions cannot change that. So we can control what they look like or sort of the more refined locations within those areas, but it essentially, Jerry Dahl would do a better job describing this, but cell service is now sort of a matter of public interest, and so a matter of state concern, and they sort of preempted local authority when they did the legislation several years ago to say that they need to be allowed anywhere, and you can have some opinions on how tall and what they look like and sort of the more specific siting or separations, but that's why.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Commissioner Stearns, any questions?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Leo? Commissioner Larson?
If you would indulge me here again, what specifically are we looking to change in the code? I'm sorry, what are we adding to the code, right?
So in the attached ordinance, everything that is in capital letters is being added to the code. So the requirement for the building permit on the first page, on the second page, the request for written justification, in paragraph B, just clarifying that the community development director gets to decide what the height is, whether it's similar to existing poles. In paragraph C, that small cells have to be on that extended common property line, so puts them at the corner versus in the middle of a yard. In section D, that the city gets to decide what that color should be when we say it would be the same color as something adjacent. And then again, in section E, reiterating that a building permit would be required.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner DiTullio, any questions?
Just one is, so all of the changes is giving the public or the community development director final say over this, even though city council is going to be called when these start popping up in neighborhoods?
So that may be the case, that already happens. But city council has not historically had any position in approving these facilities. So two things. The reason that we're clarifying the community development director is because you have to pick a person. We have already made the policy decision for this to be an administrative approval. That's actually required by the state and federal law. I don't think we can make these discretionary approvals. But the reason that we're putting this in to clarify is not whether it's council or the director, but rather the applicant versus the director or somebody on staff. So the vagaries was, I think our concern is that some applicants have been pushing back of like, we think it should be green. And we're like, no, our standard is black. So we want to make sure that it's clear in the code that it's actually the city who gets to make that call, whether it's green or black, whether it's 25 feet or 30. Because applicants, I think in the absence of that language, and the cell industry is very well endowed, have and would fight us on those kinds of things.
So the community development director has no ability to say no to a site. Can he say, or she say, move it 20 feet this way, move it 20 feet that way?
We can have an opinion on that siting on the sort of the micro granular level of 20 feet. There is a separation requirement of 1,000 feet, so we have given people that feedback. But you're correct, nobody at the city, council, directors, or anybody can say no to a small cell facility. Has to meet the requirements of this code, but if it does that, we can't say no. Which is why we want these requirements to be quite a bit more crystal clear and make sure that we're getting sort of what we want.
Thank you.
Follow up, Lauren, have you talked to any of the telephone companies on this issue?
Not related to this amendment. I believe they were pretty heavily involved, as all the jurisdictions were in 2017, originally creating the regulations. And we've had fairly good experiences with the few providers that we've been working with along the way, and they have been amenable. It's been a learning curve for everybody, frankly, on the city side and the private side. So everything that's in here reflects the practice that we have already been doing. And folks have been cooperative for the most part, would you say? Scott's been more involved in the review.
Yeah, I mean, we've had so few. I think there's maybe a perception that there's been a lot of these poles, and we have only actually had 4 actually get built citywide. And I think all 4 from the same company.
Following up the appearance of these small cells, are they, as you see in the picture they submitted with the application, do they look like something that goes onto an existing light pole, or are there other styles of these things?
There are a couple different styles. There's one that's wooden. So if the predominant sort of utility pole in the neighborhood is wood, then there's one that's wood. It's on a 48th maybe. The image that you see is in an area where the predominant light pole is black. And so in that image, that top portion that gets has a different diameter at the very top, that's the antenna. So their goal is to have them blend in with the other utility poles in the area to the extent those are already above ground.
And then this amendment to the ordinance gives the city the ability to work with the cell phone provider and see that they comply.
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
Commissioner Shelkey, any questions?
Yeah, maybe just to clarify. So, to some people, the 5G is a big issue, but it doesn't sound like any governmental agency has any control of where the 5G goes.
That's correct, yeah, and that's partly why we added sort of that parenthetical clarification. A lot of the comments that we've heard are very specific to 5G, but from a regulatory standpoint, in both local, state, and federal law, that is just one type of small cell facility. So you're right, we can't regulate those specific frequencies that are under this umbrella category of telecommunications.
Okay. Thank you.
Right, I could make a comment about drone use in neighborhoods and 5G, but that would be unprofessional. So I guess at this time, if the commission is ready, we could entertain I am sorry, we did have one member of the public that signed up to speak, Timothy Burnett. Sorry, you've been so patient all this evening, and
Hello, my name's Timothy Burnett, B-U-R-N-E-T-T. I'm at 6995 West 33rd Avenue, and I just want to start out by saying I've been here all my life. I was born in this town. I love this place. I'm so appreciative to everybody that's listened to me on this, all the way up to the top development guy, Kin. I forgot his last name, but he was very helpful. He actually personally got back to me, and thank you for listening to me. The thing that I really want to drive home here is, though, that is what we have here is we have a new technology coming in, and there's a lot of fear of, we don't want to get sued, we don't want to, but there are steps that can be taken in addition to this, is what I would really like to adapt. I like the direction this is going, but it needs to go further, is what we honestly need is, the reality is, people on busier streets, like major collector streets, have different expectations than people that are in the smaller cul-de-sacs. So is what other towns have done is developed a hierarchy where you have to put them here before you put them there. And that's really the direction we need to go in now before these things do come in big time in our city, which they ultimately will, is what we need to do, in my opinion, is establish a hierarchy where they need to go on more major streets first. And if we do this correctly, I think we can make everybody happy because once they put them on the busier areas, they won't be able to put them in the other areas because they have to be a certain amount of feet apart. So I think we can do this very smart, but we really need to stay on top of establishing a hierarchy where they have to go first. Because I just want to drive home the point of, I think your expectations are a little different in this nice rural town. This is my little version of Mayberry. I've been here. I was born at Lutheran Hospital. I love this town. I've been listened to so well on this, and I appreciate that. But I think that we need to really get ahead of this big tech coming in here. They're going to do whatever's cheapest for them to do. They're not going to care if it's right in front of your grandma's house, right by a big window, within 5 feet of your house. There's a lot of, the other issue is we have in our code that they're going to go on existing poles first. But the problem you see when you look in Wheat Ridge, a lot of our poles are in some weird areas. They're right in your yard, they're right up in front of your house, directly in front of windows, where some of the other towns just put a new pole in where it's more convenient. But we have in our code, they have to go on existing first, which I think we can make this work. But like I said, I think we really need to establish a hierarchy of putting them on more major roads first. And then I don't think it'll be as much of a surprise to the people where if they can prove that after they've put them in to the more major areas, I think that it'll work itself out in a way where some people that don't expect these things going in, don't have to. It might be a lot easier for everybody, including the planners, the phone calls that may come in the future. I'm glad we're staying ahead of this, and I'm glad we're one of the last towns, coming up on this stuff, but I just think we need to stay proactive. This is a good step in the right direction, but we do need to look into a hierarchy of, let's put them on busier streets first. The expectations are different on Wadsworth than back on, 35th, on a cul-de-sac or whatever.
okay.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Sure.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
we may have the same comment or question.
Well, my question
Just
would
one
be-
second. We do have two people on
Oh.
Zoom, so if anybody on Zoom would
sorry.
like to comment, please go ahead and raise your hand. And then I'll be happy to address the public comment. No hands raised. Thanks.
So my question is,
Okay, so no other comments from the public? Anyone else in the audience? Okay. Ma'am, please approach the podium. Provide us with your first and last name and spell your last name and share your address with us. And you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Hello, my name is Valerie Cardenas, and I live at 3775 J Street. And I'm actually here
Can you
kind of
please
to
spell
address
your
some
last
of your
name?
questions here.
Ma'am, can you please spell your last name?
Oh, I'm sorry. Cardenas, C-A-R-D-E-N-A-S.
Thank you.
I kind of want to address what your concerns are here. You suggested placing them, that the city have control where to place them. I actually work in the industry, and I only here just because I knew this came up, and I just wanted to hear what the city's plans are. And the reason why carriers put them where they put them is because of holes in service. They place them based on customer complaints, and for example, the project that was discussed before this item on the agenda, that you're going to put in 75 new townhomes, that's going to increase the density right there, so therefore the cells cannot accommodate the existing ones, the capacity, so it becomes a capacity issue. So that's why carriers place their facilities where they request them. And so I just wanted to kind of elaborate on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And that's it.
Great, that was very helpful. Anyone on Zoom change their mind and want to
No hands have been
provide
raised.
comment? Okay. Anyone else in the audience that would like to provide public comment? I thought I saw you raise your hand a moment, sir, but nope. Nope, okay, great. With that, I'll go ahead and close the citizens forum.
should I go now?
Okay, so seems like we still have some questions and comments from the commissioners. Commissioner DiTullio, please.
Yes, we do, because that's what we do. So I support local control, and I'm really kind of frustrated that the state has made this a statewide concern because they are dropping these in neighborhoods and cul-de-sacs and every place else. So there has to be a balance here. Based on the comments that this gentleman made about a hierarchy, and the hierarchy could be 38th, 44th, 41st, 32nd, is that a possibility to add a hierarchical, working with these cell phone provider or the providers, that they could look at these hierarchical places first before they went into the neighborhoods? Is that an option to add into the code? And that could be a recommendation from this board potentially to the council?
Yeah, I don't think it's an option. The city attorney was involved in the drafting of this ordinance, but what we can do is confer with him and share that this was the discussion and the public comment in your discussion, and have him confirm whether or not that's an option before it goes to council. You know, what we have done historically when we're talking about more full-size cell facilities, if there's going to be a new freestanding tower, we require that they show the coverage maps that Ms. Carnitas mentioned and sort of show that there's a need in that particular location. So there may be a way to augment the justification of the location, but I don't know. I can ask Mr. Dahl to have a better answer for that before council makes a decision.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the commissioners?
I think if people that live on busier streets might not see it the same way. You know, they may say, we already have the busy street and now we have this too. And so if you have a hierarchy, I'm not sure everybody would be excited about that.
Good point.
Good point.
Would you like a motion?
Well, I actually just wanted to reflect for a second. I mean, really, it's initiated by the industry providers, right? And so we're constantly just in reactive mode, other than if there was a way to have a requirement that says, this is how we plan to build our network out. But I wonder, as a city, is that something we would even know how to advise or proactively map?
No, that's not our role.
Okay, and so is it possible that you could have any number of wireless providers
Yes.
all wanting to, so I'm just trying to think of all the cell phone companies I know.
Yes, I mean, I think so to the public comment, there is like our reliance as a community on cellular facilities is not diminishing, so certainly we could expect to see more, but the pace has been quite slow because the coverage has been adequate in our community. We're not growing at the same rate as Denver, so they have needed more small cell as they have built a lot more multifamily and multi-story structures. This does have the separation requirements of 1,000 feet, so that typically means you're not going to get more than one on any given block, based on our typical block lengths are 300 by 600. But yeah, the way that the state and federal law is recognizing that, residents and business owners and travelers need cell service, so it's like any other development application, they can come to us and say, here's what we're thinking of putting in, and then we go through the criteria that are in the code.
And so is it feasible so I understand there's a 1,000-foot separation requirement, so within I don't know, the stretch of 2 miles, would you maybe have, like, if it was needed, would you have like several different companies all having that, excuse me, that cell, the CRMS, like right there? Or, I mean, I guess I'm just thinking about, okay, are we being redundant? Where Verizon needs one thing and then all of a sudden Xfinity Mobile wants this, or?
Yeah, I mean, our code encourages just generally in the CMRS section to have co-location. So in any larger freestanding cell facility, you see multiple carriers, right? The tower here at City Hall has 5 carriers and the county's emergency responses. Smaller cell, I think, can do some co-location, though because of their smaller size, it's not going to be that many providers. Though the actual design of it, you would never know if you're seeing the same provider's antenna or 10 different ones, because the goal here, especially with the modified language, is to make them blend in, and hopefully you don't recognize like, oh, that's a light pole regular and that's a light pole with CMRS. So camouflage is our goal, especially if they do start to proliferate in a different rate than they have so far.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Any discussion? Okay, at this point, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move to recommend approval of the proposed ordinance amending section 26-615 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws concerning small CMRS facilities. And I'm going to add an amendment. I further move that staff have a discussion with this city attorney about the possibility of a hierarchical locations for these types of facilities.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Disney. Let's go ahead and call for a vote.
Motion carries 7-0.
Great, thank you. Go ahead and close the hearing. All right, so let's see. The number 6 on our agenda is any new business. Lauren, do you have any new business for us to discuss?
Just a little bit. So we did, to follow up on that motion, we will talk to the city attorney next week, well in advance of that city council date of May 23rd. For planning commission dates, we don't anticipate having a May 5th, though the publishing deadline is next week, so we will get in touch to confirm that. We do expect to have a meeting on May 19th. That'll be a development application and then also a study session about 44th Avenue sub-area plan. And I did not prepare any development updates, project updates. I forgot to do that today. So if you've got any questions, I can hopefully field them.
Lucky's.
One of us has to ask.
I know.
What's
Lucky's.
going in next to
I
the
know.
rec center? What is that? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
No. We know that one. What about the-
Lucky's?
No update on Lucky's. I did talk to that developer last week, and I think part of the challenge there, they would love to have that filled for the community's benefit and their own, but they are trying to be patient, largely because of the Wadsworth construction. So the original goal had been Lucky's comes in 3 years before construction, gets very well established, you know, and it would be more challenging for a new business to come in during construction. You may recall, when Wadsworth is fully completed, there will be a signal at that mid-block entrance that would go into Lucky's, and that is a very attractive option when you're trying to re-tenant a big building. So it may be that we just need to be a little more patient, get closer to that signal, and get someone in there. But that's what I know to date. That could change.
Do we know anything about the tenant mix in the Sprouts parking lot?
I don't. Do
You know, across from Morningstar?
I don't. I know that the building is a retail building, so it's not being fitted out for restaurants. So I think
Oh,
it'll be
okay.
like light retail uses, or
Like
a
a
restaurant that doesn't need a
dentist or-
fryer or anything like
Yeah.
that, yeah.
There was a fun article this week that I shared with my team, was it in 5280, about the bowling alley and brew pub tenant at Gold's. So if you haven't seen that, that was a fun interview.
I saw the one that, I think it was in our Wheat Ridge paper, but I haven't seen the one
Yeah.
there. When is that, when are we gonna see activity there?
They have a few.
Oh, is it? Okay,
yeah,
I don't,
a few
I live in
active
my little
permits
work
out
from
there
home
right
bubble.
now. There's a lot of work going on, and we have, I think, multiple tenant applications in, so you'll see a bunch of stuff, maybe even as soon as summer.
Oh, great,
Probably more like 2023 for most of them, though.
yeah.
I did notice the other day that the warehouse next to Medved now has a tenant. International Paper.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
And, you know, as you know, they have their corrugated packaging building right across the way, and then another one in Golden. So it sounds like the folks at International Paper like Wheat Ridge.
It's great. I didn't know that.
That's great. And New Image is fitting in well, so that's great. All right, any old business that we need to catch up on? I don't know, we seem to go between new and old.
I know, I don't ever know it's an old topic, but a new update. I don't have any old business, no.
Okay. Anything else from the commissioners before we adjourn?
I know I may
You're
seem.
passionate. I love
I know
it.
I may seem OCD a little bit, and maybe some staff people think I'm a little crooked, but I think they could straighten my sign out so that I'm level with everybody else.
Oh.
It doesn't really look good for the public,
It kept falling, so you're lucky it's up there.
but the writing is actually
Like I
crooked.
said, it kept falling, so you're lucky it's up there.
They had to cut back on adhesive.
I know we're cutting back on glue and paper, but
It
anyway.
does stand out.
Yeah, well, I stand out enough. I don't need any more.
Maybe we'll put it in the 22 budget to get something that's not just printed off of and taped on, right?
That your
23
children
budget.
have worked on at home as a project.
I would appreciate it.
All right, well, on that wonderful note, let's go ahead and adjourn for the
Yep.
evening.
Madam Chair, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Let's have a vote.
Motion approved, 7-0.
Okay.
I noticed that when we first sat down, I was like, that's gonna